Just outside of existence and beyond time, there was a being. He had been here for a long time at least. That is what he could guess. His memories were never solid, and it had become impossible to place down when things had passed. Where these thoughts had happened was never a matter of question, thankfully, as he had known only one place. This small plot of land several lengths long as it was wide. He could see clear from end to end and was content with what he possessed, and did not want for more. Many days were spent cultivating a garden, working on his homestead, enjoying life as it was. Night would never arrive, the land bathing in the crisp, clean spotlight that radiated from within. Beyond the edges, dark mist swirled and churned with uncertainty and occasionally nipped at the edges of his home, chilling and withering the life he grew. He cared not to venture too far from home, as he had learned there was nothing out there for him. There was once that he had left the safety of his realm. The light followed confidently behind him, but past the firm earth and smooth grass he nurtured, it began to dim. The ground outside of his sphere was cold, smooth, and flat, soaking the warmth and comfort through the heels of his feet with every step. Curiosity drove him further, though, and he secretly wished to know more about the swirling shadows that gnawed at his home. Rarely he could feel a small pebble or stone underfoot, and a rush of excitement filled him. Perhaps he was inching closer to someone else's dwelling. Perhaps, even, there were other beings out there. As he wandered further from safety and closer to the unknown, the light darkened. A strong sense of unease filled his gut and wrenched its way up to his tongue, gagging him. There were other beings out here. Violent, churning beasts wrought from the darkness itself. He attempted to scream but found no voice, his body frozen in terror at the sight. The beast circled him with some sense of novelty. It, too, had never glimpsed a creature like him, but it could feel the pull of his magic within and lurched slowly closer. He cautiously watched multiple red eyes flash like cracked rubies in a thunderstorm as his light slowly blinked darker and darker. Needle-like fangs revealed themselves from sleek ooze and wrapped around its body in twisted adornments, branching, and wild antlers slowly materialized from the mist and stole their mass from the fog surrounding them both. The air around them cleared as the beast finally revealed its form, twisting and mutilated. Several legs slumped, unable to support the weight of the body. More so, it was hungry. He dug his heels in backwards into the cold, unforgiving ground, and launched himself as far away from it as he could in a single bound as it lunged towards him. He narrowly escaped the full brunt of its strike and felt its cold ooze graze past his ankle. Just as quickly as he had hit the ground, he lurched himself upwards, feeling scrapes on his flesh for the first time. Pebbles lodged themselves into his palms and left painful indents as he clenched his fists, and he ran as fast as he could away from the creature. Home was lost to him, but he knew that wherever he needed to run, it was away from this monster. He could hear lurching and hissing from within the mist around him as he ran. Strange noises he was unfamiliar with but knew well. The calls of predators, alerting to a potential meal. He could feel a hopelessness within him as he bounded further from his encounter. He knew now that he was no longer alone and had no means to defend himself, and furthermore, no way to return to safety. His pace slowed as he heard the noises draw further and further away from him. His light was now cold, his existence truly empty and alone. He sat down and pondered the situation he was in, arms wrapped around his knees and his head tucked behind them. Everything from this moment on would need to be calculated, thought out completely, and most importantly, careful. He knew that his garden was somewhere, and that he couldn't have just forgotten where it was. He had spent eternity there after all. He closed his eyes and focused deeply, trying to remember. He felt a strange pull come from within. A flickering of light flashed between his mind and his eyes, drawing him forward. He stood up, eyes still closed, and focused on the direction the light was pulling him towards. He could still hear noises in the dark and on occasion would break focus to assess the local area, and noticed that as he walked further, his light began to regain strength, and that he could see more of the mist around him. Not that it revealed much. He could feel himself getting closer to safety, but just as his light cusped close to his domain, a terrifying screech pierced his thoughts and shattered his focus. A tendril wrapped itself solidly around his foot and dragged him to the ground, lurching him back into the dark. But just as quickly as it grasped him, the tendril fell limp against his leg and rolled off to the side, decaying back into dust in the wind. He clambered up and sprinted forward, making a dash for the protection of his home and not daring to spend a second longer in this cursed darkness. Something behind him stirred, but he cared not to find out what it may be. As he crossed the threshold of his sphere, he collapsed onto the grass and sighed deeply, taking in the scent of the area and savoring the safety of his home. He could now relax and feel the full sting of his wounds. A fresh, new sensation he was not excited to endure, and he spent countless moments nurturing his injuries as best as he could. With no prior knowledge, he wrapped them in grape leaves and a poultice of herbs to help soothe the sting and cool the wounds. As he recollected himself and regained his strength from the experience, he noticed that the unforgiving mist that surrounded his home now moved in strange shapes. And, occasionally, he could catch a glimpse of something monstrous writhing within. Even stranger, rarely, he would see a pair of emerald green eyes. But that was in the past now, and his days are back to normal. He worries not about going outside of the sphere and certainly not about demons getting inside. Still, as time passes, the world changes, and he has noticed that the fog grows thinner and the monsters grow more substantial. Even more concerning, the green eyes seem to watch him when his back is turned. He couldn't tell that the eyes were actually watching him, of course. Every time he turned around there was no evidence of a creepy stalker in the mist. However, he swore he could feel it. A deep burning sensation that ate right through him, tainting his serenity with acidic anxiety. It felt like pain, hunger, loneliness, flavors of unease that his soul was not used to. He was originally concerned that it was something attacking him, some foul writhing thing in the mist, imposing its will upon him to draw him to madness. But the pains never lingered for long. Cautious in their encroachment, whenever he felt it too strongly, they would pull back and retreat. A ghostly cold feeling, the only lingering evidence they were ever there. He grew mystified by the experiences, longing to know why he was being haunted by such strange spirits. The more answers he craved, and the bolder he grew in trying to catch the creature, the less he knew. Eventually, he learned to notebook, writing down his experiences to keep track of the not passing of time, so that memories could become clearer and the past could stay living. He would focus on writing down not just his feelings, but the visuals of the world he cultivated, cataloging different varieties of plants, their life stages, the best way to encourage their growth and success. He still kept a running notation in the margins of every time he felt like wandering outside of home, or remembered the pain of the cuts and scrapes, or whenever he felt the burning sensation on his soul again. He wrote about how the mist grew thinner and how some demons were long, thin beasts with thousands of eyes and twisted limbs that looked like they could fall over any second, while others were fat and squat with nary an eye to see but nostrils so large they could easily track down whatever prey they desired. He wrote how the monsters often bickered between themselves, forming unlikely alliances that would frequently be broken when one of the groups ended up missing, presumed to be consumed secretly by a traitor. He did not actually know much about the lives of demons. His only real encounters with them were running away, but he enjoyed making guesses about their species, lives, and relationships. His favorite type was what he called souplets, little tiny balls of fuzz that seemed barely differentiated from the mist itself save for their small red eyes. They rolled and tumbled along in the wake of larger fiends and were often squished and consumed by them for energy. Rarely, a sootlet might find itself in a larger collection of soutlets, and by chance they formed together to make a larger and more formidable fiend. Larger fiends were much more terrifying to him, having sharp jaws and teeth, claws, and misshapen bodies with limbs in wrong places. He still found some interest watching and cataloging them. For example, the beasts often fled the area right before he felt the ghostly pains upon him, and those that did not flee typically do not show up again. There were even a few larger beasts that he knew well enough to give names to. There was a large, squat monster with twisting crystalline structures spiraling from its back that dragged itself along the ground with some struggle that he called stone spine. A thing and needly creature that seemed to be blind on one side he called the Seeker, and a beast he knew well, the one that first attacked him that he now called Fanghorn. He felt a twinge of true fear go through him whenever he could glimpse Fanghorn, and the beast seemed eager to taunt him whenever it was in the area. It would often linger at the edge of the world and slowly steal away life from the plants to close to the edge, growing slightly stronger as the fruits of his labors feed it. He was powerless to do anything about the vile creature. He had no real way to defend himself and certainly no way to attack such a creature and leave any lasting damage, let alone mortally wound it. He was comfortably confident that the demon could not enter his home, and that he had no true reasons to worry about it endangering his life. But now, the beast was growing bolder every day, knowing that his home was a captive food bowl for it to eat from. Now, the beast had lingered for over 3 pages of notes in his book, absolutely unheard of, and he felt the sense of pain and unease around him. But this time it seemed to not be focused on himself.